be on the beach. So it's an honor and pleasure, privilege to be here. Like I said, I'm non-traditional in that I was not raised with generations in any agriculture, actually. I do come from pioneer stock, coming 3 generations ago from American Fork, Utah, and then many back generations, Basque Country. So I do have sheep in my blood, and I wanted to echo Dominique that there comes a time when you realize that there is a divine calling to choose something that in this day and age is very abstract, because it's not a breadwinning career choice, but it's a career choice where the quality of life and the quiet moments that you have with the land and the animals and the camaraderie that you have with other people is outstanding, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Gets emotional when you talk about the country news. So I actually live right above San Francisco, and the majority of my sheep and goat experience has been on the urban periphery. I have managed an operation that has used sheep and goats to manage vegetation for wildfire hazard abatement around the Bay Area. Teaming up with a Basque family from the Central Valley who know sheep really well, and then adding goat onto the operation that definitely took a little bit for them to sign on to having goats. We have built an operation that was based off of a land stewardship project that was on 1,200 acres in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I was an environmental studies student at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I didn't really know much about sheep and goats, but I knew I loved the land, and I documented what the sheep and goats were doing on this 1,200-acre ranch, being used for managing the encroachment of coyote brush, because the rancher really wanted to encourage perennial grasses, and also reforest redwood trees on this beautiful ranch that had been over-timbered. And so he used high-density, high-impact, low-duration grazing with sheep and goats, shepherding with H2A workers managed by Bosco out of the Central Valley, and I watched what incredible things happened on this ranch. The coyote brush started to push back, the grassland started to come. You could tell that there was better water function and mineral function happening because these animals were fertilizing the area, the grasses were absorbing the water. From an ecological standpoint, animals on the land was incredible. And so this allergy that you see in the West of grazing is bad was absolutely opposite from what my experience was on this ranch. Having been really close to San Francisco and the Bay Area, I had heard about this East Bay Regional Parks District hiring people to graze on their lands, getting paid to graze. We weren't paying to graze, but to get paid to graze. And I said, hey, rancher, let's try this thing. We're gonna write a proposal, we'll put a bid in, and we'll see what we can do. So he didn't believe me. He kind of was a little hesitant. He said, okay, let's see what you got, 25-year-old. So I went ahead and I wrote this proposal as good as I could. It was my first time writing a big proposal. It was about 45 pages. The contract was for 3 years with a 2-year extension. It amounted to over $1 million, and we got it. And then we brought livestock to the urban areas. Now let me tell you, livestock are beautiful, but if you see them in the city or if you see them in the suburbs, it's a whole different thing. It's like bucolic meets, this whole different thing. So my home base was Berkeley, California, and I got to live in Berkeley, and I would drive out to these different parks 20 minutes, 45 minutes away, and I would essentially be camp tender, and I would put out fires with the public because Lord knows there's going to be a lot of issues when sheep are behind someone's home. Goats especially. So I'm just gonna give you a quick silly story, but this is not that silly because it's quite common in contract grazing, and that's what we call it. And I'm impassioned to proliferate contract grazing all over the country, because I think animals can steward our lands around urban areas, around suburban areas, and rural areas. These animals, when managed carefully, can push back the encroachment of invasive species, can reduce monocultures of undesirables, can reduce the hazard of fire, can create viable livelihoods for untraditional agrarians, and keep traditional alive as well. So the one story that I want to tell you, which is a common thing when you are a project manager for a contract grazing outfit in the urban areas. So I get the call. I make rounds to my 4 bands. They're not bands actually, they're bunches. About 450 head mixed species sheep and goats. We work with hair sheep. Dorper St. Croix cross with Spanish Boer cross goats. I get a call, and it's from a nice sheriff, and I make friends with all the sheriffs. They have my number there at the Regional Parks Dispatch Center, and they say, hey, we got an issue. I'm like, okay, what's it this time? I just got a call from a really alarmed and upsetted woman who is in her lawn with a hose spraying down sheep and goats that are in her lawn. She doesn't know what to do. I'm like, okay, hose, I haven't ever heard that one in herding strategy. So I call my herder and I say, hey Oswaldo, where you at, guy? Because there's an issue up the hill. Fortunately, he got wind to the issue and realized that he set up some electric fence line. We use netting. He set up some electric fence line that had been in soft soil and had been pushed over for one reason or another, and 450 head go along in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the East Bay. Now, this is not a good thing. You start thinking about how much insurance the outfit has, and if you're going to keep your job or if you're going to get a better truck next year. All of these things are on the table. The Peruvian herder is quivering. But there's one wonderful thing that I have a skill at, and I'm really blessed in it. Not everybody in the sheep industry would like to say they like people, but I like people. And I can find ways to be able to communicate with all people. So I approached this woman who's very upsetted. The sheep are still being gathered. There is, pellets everywhere. And she has some destroyed solar lights and landscaping and things like this. And, there was some aggravation there, but I said, pruning, landscaping, you're covered. This is gonna pop back in no time. We'll cover your gardeners to come to fix the irrigation. We get to talking a little bit more, and she settles down, and she's like, you're cute. How did you get into this? And, after a few minutes, she invited me in, and she gave me a Pepsi. It was about 120. It wasn't that hot in the Bay Area, but it felt like that. And she invited me in, and I had the herder also come in, and his Oswaldo and I sat down there with her, and she brought her husband in, and we became buddies. And actually, she still follows up with me. She sends me emails because I gave her my card, and she wants me to send her photos of what I'm doing. And this is not a unique situation, which is so cool because, we're making some disruption in some gardens, but we're also making friends, and we're teaching people that we're doing good stuff. And the story of destruction can become stories of friendship and stories of education. And that's one of the things that I love about this work. I think that it's important to realize that there's opportunity for new folks that don't come from generations of sheep or goat ranching to enter into this. And how do we do that? And what are new innovative ways to bring livestock into land stewardship that's looking at regeneration, not just sustainability, but regenerative aspects of agriculture? And how can we make viable vocations for us folk who are honestly ecological doctors and also food producers? So just remember, sheep plus grass equals food and fiber. Thank you.
prosecutor Monica